Hi everyone and welcome to the Forest of Arden. My name is Alistair Davies and I'm here filming you a little video on the difference between an iron and a wood swing. So I quite often get asked by my pupils, what do I do differently with my driver? How do I swing differently with my driver? What should I do differently with my driver? And I constantly say to them that the swinging action itself, I want you to do nothing consciously different. However, I do want you to stand differently to the driver than you do an iron. The subtle differences in the types of mechanics we have is the swing plane is more upright with an iron and we hit more down on the ball with an iron. But generally speaking, that's all created by the shaft length and also how we stand to the golf ball. The conscious action, how we swing the golf club, I'd want no difference in the golf swing. So some people then might say to me, well, hang on, my wrist cock more with an iron. Well, the club's heavier. When the club becomes heavier, it enforces more wrist cock. So these things again happen quite naturally and quite unconsciously rather. So with certain people, we might well look at their golf swing and see how their subconscious behavior changes their swing and maybe give them things to think of that will make a difference. But generally speaking, I want a totally unconscious swing change, driver to iron. So the difference is with a driver, we're going to have the ball position opposite the left heel, and we're going to have a wider stance and the weight on the right foot, 55%. We're going to have our sternum behind the golf ball, sort of in the center of the stance as such here. Now, with an iron, I would do slightly narrower stance, shoulder width apart. Ball position, this is a 7 iron, so the ball position in the center, the hand position opposite the inside of the left thigh, which is where it was with the driver, so the same hand position. But obviously the ball position being further back, if I show you this, creates a kind of different relationship between the leading edge and the hands. And that in turn creates a different angle of attack. Also because obviously the sternum is behind the golf ball with the driver, but not really so with the iron. It might be level or slightly to the right, depending on what club we have. It's going to change the angle of attack perception again. The width of stance again is going to make a difference to the angle of approach. So these things kind of happen naturally. Then in terms of this kind of swing plane, obviously you'll see here the driver is longer, so we're stood further away from the golf ball. And because of that, it swings on a flatter arc or a flatter plane. And that all happens naturally and unconscious. So all we have to do is ensure we stand to the golf ball correctly for each club and try and trust our swing mechanics. Now, we might see a greater error in dispersion and shots with the driver purely because of two things. One, the ball's going further, or at least it should be, so the dispersion's always going to be wider percentage-wise. But also, there's less loft on the club, so it's going to create more side spin. So sometimes the same swing will give you slightly different results and you think, hang on, is my technique wrong for one club or the other? I'm really good in my irons, for example, but not very good in my wood. That's something I get quite a lot. Well, look at the difference in the length of the club. Obviously, the closer you stand to your work, the easier it should be. The further away you stand from your work, the harder it should be. And if you imagine an aerosol spray can, if you sprayed it from the nozzle, the further away from the nozzle, the bigger the dispersion. So the percentage dispersion is probably the same. So a 100-yard shot with a 10% error is 10 yards. A 300-yard shot with 10% error is 30 yards. Just simple stuff. So it's always going to have a wider dispersion. So I'll show you now a driver swing and an iron swing, and again, I'm consciously going to do nothing different with either. So let me take my setup for you. And I'm going to go ahead and hit a driver shot. Okay. Now I'm going to hit an iron. So again, it's going to be off the ground. So it's teed up. It's not teed up. Obviously, that is a change, and that will again change the angle of attack a little bit too. So I'm going to hit this iron shot now off the ground. And again, they're consciously doing nothing different with my mechanics of my golf swing, but I am standing to the ball very differently. So conceptually, try and do the same swing with your iron to the wood, but make sure your setup, your pre-swing positions are correct for the club you're using and for the ball flight you're trying to achieve. Have clear intention in what you're trying to do, have clear confidence. Don't stand there with doubt, and enjoy your golf.